Lesson 2 is angles associated with parallel lines. So there's a lot of terminology that comes with this section. You will need a protractor, so if you don't have one, you can come up and grab one, because you are going to have to make some angle measurements. So if I have a diagram and I have parallel lines, we can symbolize parallel lines by putting 2 arrows on the line, or putting sets of arrows. Sometimes, depending how many parallel lines I have in a drawing, I might use double arrows to show that those 2 lines are parallel if I had another set of parallel lines. So if we see this type of symbol notation on 2 lines, it is a guarantee that these 2 lines are parallel to each other. If I take those 2 parallel lines and then draw another line that intersects them, that intersecting line is called a transversal. And we did this last year in grade 10, actually in 10-3. We look at the relationships that we get when we take a parallel lines and cross it with a transversal. We get various angles. So the first type of angle that we get is corresponding. The workbook calls them F angles. I don't want to worry about the F. I want you to think about the word corresponding. Things that are corresponding kind of go together. They match up. So corresponding angles mean that they're on the same side of the transversal and they're in the same position to each other. So if I have parallel lines like this, and I draw a transversal, and I indicate this angle right here, and I want to know what are my corresponding angles to that one. Well, it has to be on the same side of the transversal in order to correspond, and it has to be in the same position. So if it's in the bottom right-hand corner in this group, it has to be in the bottom right-hand corner of that group. So in this diagram, my corresponding angles are the angles created with these 3 parallel lines, or 4 parallel lines, and it's the angle underneath. I want you to measure those 4 angles and tell me what you notice. So, are they all equal? Yes, they are. So corresponding angles are angles that are equal to each other, or corresponding angles have equal measurements. Things to remember with my corresponding angles. So I did one example, or I showed you one set. These were corresponding angles. They're on the same side of the transversal in the same position. So if I said this was my angle, which angle would correspond to that? The top, bottom, left, right here. So those would be corresponding angles, and their measurement would be equal. What if I started here? What would correspond to that angle? Top left. Top left on the bottom. And then if I went top right, oh, yeah, bottom right. So same position, same side of the transversal. So let's look at an example. Use corresponding angles and straight angles to calculate the unknown angles as marked. So if I look at the first question, and I want to find out the measurements of angle A or B, or A and B, what could I use? I have these 2 lines are parallel. This is my transversal. So corresponding angles, if this is in the top right, then I have to be in the top right. So angle A will have to equal 120 degrees because it's corresponding. So if angle A equals 120 degrees, what does angle B equal?
60.
How'd you get 60, Reed?
180 minus 120.
Good. Because A and B form that straight line, so they have to add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so let's look at the next one. So my parallel lines are these two lines. There's a line extending. But this is still the transversal. So if this angle here is 124 degrees, what other angle would be 124 degrees? And if I know what C is, how can I find out D? Okay, so what is 180 minus 124? Okay. And then on this side, I have a transversal that's going in the other direction. So again, if I have 132 degrees, which of these two angles would be 132 degrees? E. And then F would equal 48 degrees. 180 minus 32. 132. Okay. The next type of angles that we have are alternate interior angles. So let's think about the wording of this. Alternate interior. So if these are my parallel lines and there's my transversal, interior means, what does it mean for interior? How do I define that word? Inside. So if I'm talking about inside, I'm talking about this part in here. So if we're talking about alternate interior, what does alternate mean? How would you describe the word alternate? The opposite side. So if this was one angle, where would the other angle be if it was an alternate interior? Other side at the bottom. Interior and alternate. The workbook goes through a whole thing about it makes a Z shape. But then you have to take that Z shape and draw it 4 different ways. What I want to look at is I want to look at one of the words. They are alternate interior angles. So alternate means that they're on either side of the transversal. Interior meaning that they're inside the parallel lines. That's what it means to be alternate interior. Okay? Alternate interior angles are equal. So what I want you to do right now to verify that is I want you to measure the indicated angles right here in this section. So are they equal? Yes. So we have that alternate interior angles are equal to each other. So if I look at class example number 2, alternate interior angles. So if these are my parallel lines, and this is my transversal, alternate means that they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So which angle is alternate to 69 degrees? Yes. So angle B would equal 69 degrees. Does angle A have an alternate angle? 47. Alternate interior. So there's my transversal, the parallel lines, so I'm looking inside the parallel lines on opposite sides. So angle A would be 47 degrees. And how would I find out angle C? subtract these from 180. So 180 minus 69 and 47 would equal 64 degrees. Okay, so let's look at B. My parallel lines this time are right here. There's my parallel line. Here's my transversal. So do I have a pair of alternate angles?
D and 42.
D and 42. Okay. What can you tell me about angles E and F?
They're corresponding.
They're the same, they're corresponding. So angle E is going to equal angle F. But does that mean that they equal 42 degrees? So how do I figure out what angle E equals?
Minus 42 from 180 and divide that answer by 2.
Why?
Because they're the same. Because those
How?
straight line you have to,
How do I know that they're the same?
because they're corresponding.
Okay, but why did you divide this by 2?
Because that's like what's left of like all your angles. Kind of split it.
So where does the 180 come in from?
Because it's 180 because you're straight line.
Right here? But angle E is over here, so why are you moving it there?
Because it's the same as F.
How do I know it's the same as F? Like I know that E and F are the same, but how do I know that this right here would be the same as F? This is correct, but there's another reason for it. What shape do I have here?
Triangle.
What kind of triangle?
They're triangle. They're isosceles.
Isosceles, because these two sides are equal. In an isosceles triangle, if these two sides are equal, these two angles would be equal. So that's why I could divide it by 2. So 180 minus 42 divided by 2 equals? Thank you. So this was 42 degrees because it was an alternate interior. This was 69 degrees because they're corresponding.